I connect myself to the correct frequency to achieve any goals that I have. And just imagine your future self. Let's just say there's a person that you want to become, and your future self, this is a really easy analogy. Your future self listens to a particular song on Spotify. All right, there's a particular song they listen to. And the you right now sometimes can hear that song. That is the song your future you is listening to, always. And the more times you can connect and listen to that song that they're listening to, and the closer you get to being that person. And at some point, how do you know you've become that person? When that song you're listening to on Spotify becomes your default playlist. That's your default song. That's when you, by default, became the person you've always wanted to be. And I'm not talking even in any, like, you don't have to be some great, crazy athlete, whatever. I'm talking any goal. You want to be a professional golfer, all you have to do is attune to that frequency. I'm not using frequency like a physical radio frequency. I'm talking, it's this state. It's a state that you put your mind into where you suddenly think, okay, I am that professional golfer. What would I do in this situation? How would I handle my golfing? I know this is a tough example to choose because I absolutely, unpopular opinion, I do not give a shit about golfing. Most boring shit ever. Maybe one day I'll understand it. That's it. So the point is, for me, it happens in different times of the day, but I try to connect to that frequency. I'm using this word frequency because it just feels like it's a certain vibration or a certain state you put your mind in. You know how, let's say you wake up some days and you're like, oh fuck, I'm lazy today, like I don't want to do shit. That's the wrong frequency, or that just means you're not connected. You're that version of you that is not connected and is not that person you want to be. And through my day, I find myself putting myself into that position where I am in that state. So it could be while I'm driving, it could be at work, it could be when I have a lot of caffeine. But the point is, I try to connect that as often as possible and try to be like, all right, I am the person today, even though the person I want to become is, let's say, 10 years away, but I am that person today, at least in actions. What would that person do right now, given all the circumstances that I am in right now, given everything, the entire story? What would they do? What would the future me do? And I'm not trying to sound preachy or anything, none of this. I don't like the phrase fake it till you make it. It sounds like complete bullshit. I think these days on the internet it's called LARP, right? Just pretending you're someone you're not. The actual psychology behind it, the actual way it works is that you can't actually become someone that you are not. So you first have to swap your mental state. An example I always use, at least for myself, to just prove to myself that this always works, is I had to train like a bodybuilder when I started training, just so that I could put on some muscle. Was my goal to be a bodybuilder? Absolutely not. I don't care about bodybuilding. I did care about putting on some muscle and not being skinny as fuck. That's what I cared about. But when I was 15 years old, training with the exact same routines as these bodybuilders and eating 6 times a day, I was like, I'll just act like a bodybuilder for a few years and I'll gain some muscle. That's exactly what I did. I don't act that way anymore. I go to the gym, I work out, but I'm no longer taking it to that extreme because that's not my goal. But the goal was to put on some weight, and that's what I did through the help of gym and acting like as if I was a bodybuilder for the time being. You know what I'm saying? And the same way, I was working at this company, and I really wanted to reach a higher level. I wanted to become a manager, and something that I've always heard and always been told, the person who's going to become a manager, the person who gets selected for a management position whenever it's available, is the person who already is a manager. And I just didn't get it. I was like, but I'm not getting paid like a manager. Why should I take on all these responsibilities? I can't just go around and tell my equal level coworkers what to do. I can't tell them what to do. How can I act like a manager? But that isn't it. I had to switch my brain into a state where, all right, I have to be the manager before I can actually become the manager. It's very tricky to say, but it's kind of like, yeah, I may not have certain access. I may not be able to just boss around people. That's not what being a manager is. But does that mean I have to, get my shit done on time? It means I'm responsible for everything that I'm doing for my work. I get it done to a high quality. I hold myself accountable and others accountable. I encourage others to also be accountable at work. And when the time came, I was able to make it into a management position. And I no longer work there. This isn't even about some kind of, flex or anything that, you're able to scale the corporate ladder. It's not that. It's the fact that I finally understood it. And when I was in that management seat and I was thinking, all right, I got to a point where I was like, I need someone to help me in between, essentially like a supervisor. I need somebody who could manage people at a lower level so that I don't have to talk to every single person individually, because that will take all day. Having conversations, managing people, a larger amount of people, it just takes forever. How do you do that? That's how the structure works. You relay a message to somebody who is a bit lower, and they relay the message to a larger group of people. It's like a cascading effect. And the point is how I was choosing that guy. It was so obvious. It was blaringly obvious who should I have as my right-hand man. It was so obvious. And from that perspective, I was like, yeah, because this guy, he basically is a manager. He just doesn't have the title. While there were other people who are like, oh, when am I going to be a supervisor? When am I going to, grow in this position? When am I? And I'm just like, bro, you're acting like a kid. You clock in, you clock out. You don't give a shit about this job. You literally want nothing to do with it. But you would love a higher, more responsible position and get paid a bit more. That doesn't make sense. So obviously, I put the guy as my right-hand man, the guy that was already acting like a manager. Now I just gave him the title. So now he can carry out that responsibility, that position even better. That's all it was. And this applies to basically everything, right? Especially, right now, if I want to make content, so I want to be a content creator. Sounds kind of corny. I don't really want to be a content creator. I just want to talk to the internet. But the point is, I have to think like one, and I have to be someone who is a creator of videos, of whatever I make. How do I come up with video ideas? How do I do these things? I have to step into that state and think, this is how I'm going to position my day. These are the priorities. These are not important. I immediately restructure my entire day and the foreseeable future so that I can become that person. And it's very funny to say, when you get no views, like I'll be getting 3 views per video, and I'll be like, I have to pretend, or I have to be a content creator. How can I be a content creator if I get 3 views? It feels counterintuitive, but the truth is, no. Only once you become a content creator on the inside is when you will start getting views. You see what I'm saying? And this is just, I'm sharing my brain work with you guys, with this project, with what I'm doing, with this business I'm building. So it applies on every level. And I'm telling you right now, as soon as you attune to that version of yourself, just imagine, okay, I want to become a professional, this guy, or I want to be very good at communicating. I want to be a social person. What does a social person do? You 5 years from now are a social person. What do? You strike up conversations with strangers. You might make some jokes. Maybe you're sitting in the sauna after the gym session and you're just talking to the men there. Maybe that's what a social person does. I don't know. But you have to decide that for yourself and just act like that guy. And before you know it, you will become that guy. And the interesting thing is, I actually looked it up. There's something called self-perception theory. Basically, as humans, we infer who we are based on observing our own actions. Isn't that funny? You know how, let's say, there's a person out there that you're watching right now, and they're doing something stupid. So you think that's a stupid person. Well, guess what? The same thing applies to you. If you're doing something stupid and you observe yourself, because the brain observes itself, you now just think you're stupid. So why don't you do the opposite? If you observe yourself being a person who makes his bed every day, well then you're just like, all right, I guess that's who I am now. I'm just that person who makes my bed every day. I do that, by the way, but I never looked at it that way. I'm just giving an example. And you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I guess that's just who we are now. You shift your identity based on what you observe about yourself. It's not instant. It takes time. But after it changes, it's like this new identity just snaps into you, and you're like, all right, I guess that's who I am now. This could be both good and bad. You could be viewing yourself from a positive perspective, or from a negative. Like, all right, you've you smoked weed a bunch of times and you get high every day. Your brain is like, all right, I guess I'm a stoner now. Even if you don't want to accept it, you're like, I'm a stoner. What can I do? I'm a time waster. If you're wasting time. But don't say these things to yourself. Don't do these things, and your brain will correct it. Essentially, you're somebody who works hard or goes to work and earns money. Your brain is like, all right, I'm a provider now. I earn money, I go to work. So what I'm trying to say is, your brain, you observe your own actions, and that's how you infer your identity. So why don't those actions actually be the actions of a person, of whoever you want to become, that person that you want to be? It's that simple. Thanks for watching.